Hello and welcome to Property Box News. I'm Simon Evison. Coming up, I'll be looking at how Zoopla are banning their No DSS type adverts on the lettings pages. But first, on March 20th, there's a new piece of legislation comes into force. Yes, I know, another piece. It's called the Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act 2018. So what does this exactly mean? Well, it's superseding the Section 8 and Section 10 of the Landlord and Tenant Act 1985, which is stuff we already know and as a good landlord will all be putting into place. But what this new act is defining it all very precisely, so there's no doubt in anyone's mind. And the issues related to are here in this list. The basics of it is it's asking things like, is the property free from damp? Is there a good water supply? It's also looking at drainage. Is there adequate drainage and sanitary conveniences? Your toilet, of course. Is there adequate natural light and is there ventilation that's good enough for the property? Also, does the property contain any hazards by reference to the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System? For example, the whole issue around asbestos. So who will decide if the property is unfit for habitation? Well, it's largely going to fall to a surveyor, and a landlord can employ the surveyor to do the survey. And if it's deemed not fit, a landlord will have a certain amount of time to put things right. Now, if it's the tenant's fault through their lifestyle, such as things like drying clothes on the radiators and not opening windows, which actually is a common cause for damp and condensation, or perhaps they're just not very clean and tidy and it's got really unhygienic, well, the landlord is not actually responsible. If the property is not up to standard at the beginning of the tenancy and or is not maintained by the landlord throughout the tenancy, the tenant then can take the landlord to court. Property maintenance firm Aspect recently carried out a survey with tenants, and you can see we've got a list of statistics here. 44% of people who are currently renting a home or have rented a home say its condition was such that it caused them illness or injury of some sort. Most common issues are mold and damp causing allergies and respiratory problems. Also, some reported suffering burns, electric shocks and puncture wounds as a result of the condition of their rented home. And the last one there you can see says 4% experienced a carbon monoxide related illness directly attributed to the condition of their home, and that has the potential to be life-threatening. People die from carbon monoxide poisoning. Now, according to Nick Bisley, commercial director at Aspect, he said it's alarming but not surprising that so many tenants are reporting health problems directly related to the condition of their home. Our tradespeople, he said, regularly see and report examples of corner cutting on maintenance, especially where properties have been converted into homes of multiple occupancy, such as large houses also converted into flats. So, what do we need to think about? What do we need to be aware of? First of all, the drinking water supply. It's got to come from the mains and not a water supply tank. A water supply tank is the perfect scenario for bacteria growth such as Legionella. Ventilation is another thing that we've got to think about. Often poor in large properties split into flats, and without good ventilation it can cause a lot of damp issues, mold spores cause health problems, respiratory problems, allergies, that type of thing. PAT testing is also important. It's a legal obligation as a landlord if you've supplied any electrical goods, that could be washing machine, TV, kettle, toaster. If they're in your property, they also have to have a regular test to make sure that they are fit for purpose. As a landlord, it is your obligation to ensure that the property is fit for habitation at the start of the tenancy. Assuming it is, it's recommended, in fact, I would say obligatory, to have a thorough inventory inspection, preferably by a third party. Have the tenant in attendance as well and make sure they both sign the inventory. After that, how can we be sure then that the property is going to be kept in a good condition by the tenant? A set of guidelines is a good idea. Outline damp prevention. Have the tenant sign and read through the guidelines and include it in your how to rent pack. However, you need to be vigilant, and this is a very important point to take on board here. While the legislation does not state that the tenant must notify you, in a buy-to-let, the tenant must notify the landlords of a defect that arises for anything to be done about the problem. They will then, the landlord that is, will then have a reasonable time frame to fix the issue. For an HMO, it's slightly different. Where the property is rented out on a room-by-room basis, i.e. HMO, landlord's obligations will start from the moment the defect occurs, even if the tenant does not notify the landlord. The landlord will again have a reasonable time to fix the issue from the moment the defect occurs. Now, what is this reasonable time frame? Well, it sort of depends on the issue itself and external factors. For example, a broken boiler may not be considered an absolute emergency in the middle of a heat wave, let's say. However, in the depths of winter, it is reasonable to expect the landlord to act extremely quickly to sort the problem out. Fail to do the repairs on time and you could be hauled before the courts. The Act currently only applies to tenancies made after March 20th, so any tenancy entered before that date will not initially be affected, even if the tenants move in after that date. That's March 20th, 2019. The RLA, that's the Residential Landlords Association, have created a handy guide, and there is a link below in the comments section. So on now to Zoopla. Zoopla are no longer going to allow letting agents and landlords to issue blanket bans against tenants in receipt of housing-related benefits. This is a follow-on from a government decision recently that is going to clamp down on the No DSS type adverts, which are deemed to be discriminatory to those on benefits. Interestingly, 20% of tenants in the private rented sector are on benefits, yet 20% of landlords listing on Zoopla used No DSS wording. According to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, they found that half the landlords in the private rented sector will not accept any benefit claimants to apply for tenancies. They've been lobbying for change for quite some time now. In support then of recommendations from the NLA and the RLA, Zoopla are introducing measures over the coming weeks to minimise blanket restrictions against benefits tenants. Charlie Bryant, Managing Director of Zoopla, commented, "We fully support the recommendations of the NLA and the RLA, which oppose blanket bans against tenants in receipt of housing-related benefits, and we're pleased to be taking action which clarifies this position." He went on to say all tenants who are looking to rent a property deserve the chance to be fully assessed for their suitability and matched to a home that suits both theirs and the landlord's circumstances. Now, we of course would like to know your views, so please leave us a comment below. Is a blanket ban valid? RLA Vice Chair Chris Town doesn't think so. He says landlords should not refuse someone solely because they are on benefits and should consider prospective tenants on a case-by-case basis, which is a very good point. So, whatever your thoughts are, please leave a comment below and let's get a bit of a discussion going on around this subject. We'd love to hear from you. That's all from me. I'll see you next time, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye-bye. So please leave us a comment below. Is a blanket ban valid? RLI?